Hello. Today is June 10th, 2025. I'm meeting today with Mr. Tom Corrick at his home in Mead, Colorado. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for Remember and Honor. Thanks, Tom, for sitting down today to tell your story.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm glad that I got an opportunity to do this.
Very good. Let's start out, if we could. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your date of birth, where you were born, a little bit about your family growing up.
Okay. Well, I was born in Decatur, Illinois in 1950, October 16th at 5:30 p.m., according to my mother. She should know. I'm the son of Gilbert and Betty Corrick, and I have an older brother, Jerry, and a younger brother and sister, Rick and Rita, that are twins. And can you imagine this? There's my dad got a late start in life, as he said. There's only like 36 months between all three of us, or something like that.
Is that right?
All four of us. And so anyway, my dad and mom both, they came up during the Depression, but my dad especially had it pretty rough. He had brothers and sisters, but all the boys were gone. He was the youngest boy, and his dad died in 1930 when he was in 8th grade. Oof. So he was really left with supporting his younger sister and his mother, and so he was a very loving father, but kind of a no-nonsense guy too. And he served in World War II. He was on Guadalcanal. He was in heavy ordnance, and
would he ever talk much about his experiences with you at all? Or?
No, not that part of it. Other than to say that he had what he called his Army reunion every year, and he pretty much attended that. He and my mother both, and he learned how to. I don't know if he learned how before or after. I think he knew how before, but. He was a welder and repair equipment and stuff like that, but he was in the foxholes too. And now he did say after they had secured Guadalcanal that boredom really set in, and he said that one of the things they used to do was go in the jungle and hunt hogs, and he said they found a baby one day, and they put it in what he called, you can call it a hutch, he called it a hooch, in their hooch, and he said, man, nobody but the four of them could go in that hooch. He'd run them out, and the hog would. And anyway, he didn't, other than that, he didn't talk about it too much, but he worked construction for DeKalb. My dad was real handy. And he was a perfectionist on top of that. And so it was one of these things where he had a really good job, but one of the caveats of it was we had to move about every year. And I think growing up, we lived in 6 different states and moved 12 different times. This is before. In 9th grade, we were in Morrison, Colorado, and that's home, kind of. And so we finished high school. I finished high school, all four of us finished high school at Bear Creek High School. And but Morrison was a great place to grow up, home of the amphitheater, the Fort Restaurant, which is kind of a famous restaurant. Is up 285 there, and anyway, met a lot of good friends, and they're still friends today, and so. But the thing about moving like that is you learn how to stick out your hands and adjust and get along with people, and so that served me well because I had a career in sales and production, and so my wife always, Donna, always said that I could talk 20 minutes on the wrong number, and my younger brother Rick, his wife said, well, Rick could too. He'd talk 20 minutes to somebody and not know them, and I'd say, who'd you just talk to? And he said, I don't know, but they're coming to supper. And so anyway, we learned to do, and you know, it became apparent as my dad started working, I suppose then, in the mines, and he wasn't making the living that he was before. And my older brother, he was very, or he is very mechanical, and he never had any desire to go to college. He joined the Air Force, and I had a big desire to go to college because I had an interest in business, and I knew it wasn't going to happen because financially folks couldn't afford it, you know. And so, you know, I worked at the Port Restaurant, which was kind of interesting.
Oh, wow.
And I went from dishwasher to eventually backup cook to head cook out on the grill. And this is all before I graduated high school. And so I think that's probably down the road, that's what the Navy hooked me in. But anyway, so when I graduated, you know, Vietnam was pretty hot, and it looked like I was probably going to get drafted. So I thought, well, this is my thinking. Well, what branch can I join that, you know, I don't want to join the Air Force for my brothers and that, you know, so I ruled that one out. And I came to the conclusion that I'd join the Coast Guard, you know, and never leave the United States, you know. And so I had an appointment to see the Coast Guard recruiter, and I don't know what happened to him, but, you know, I waited an hour and he didn't show up, and the Navy recruiter walked by. I said, oh, come talk to me till he shows up. Well, he sucked me into joining the Navy, and I'm glad I did. It was a good experience for me for the most part. And but anyway, so that's how and you know, the thought process was, go to the Navy, I'll stay out of Vietnam, you know, and because I don't mind saying I didn't want to go.
Yeah,
you
fair
know,
enough.
you know,
Yeah.
So that the whole Navy thing kind of surprised me. I think boot camp was easier than I thought it would be.
Really?
You know?
How soon after you enlisted did you ship out to boot camp?
Well, I was on what they called the 120-day delay plan. I enlisted in, I think it was June or something like that, and I went in November 19th, right before Thanksgiving, and I went to San Diego from Colorado here, and probably the scariest part was the Marines picked us up and hauled us to the base, you know. Boy, he scared me. I thought, man, boot camps like this, I don't know. But anyway, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I will. We had a very unusual company in that we were an all-white company, and that just didn't happen, you know. And I'm not saying that because some of my best friends in there were Filipinos, blacks, you know, and et cetera. But our company commander, this is a good little story, is Chief Signalman Pope. Really, you know, a nice guy, I can say that now. But he was a black guy, you know. And honestly, there was a language barrier because we couldn't understand him at first, you know. But he got his point across pretty. You know, we'd be marching, and he'd be like, what's he saying, you know? But he had this little thing called Run to Georgia. And if we did something he didn't like, which was quite often, at night, see, they slept. They had their own little berthing space, a little office type thing where they had a bed. They didn't do it every night, but most nights they did. You'd get two guys and you'd pick up your rack or his rack that's a bed,
Yeah.
and you run in place, and it'd say something like, "Are you tired?" "Yes, sir, we're tired." "You're out of shape." And then, you catch on pretty fast. "Are you tired?" "No, sir." "Good, you're in shape, run some more," one of those things. But anyway, he turned out to be a really good guy. He really, he was a good CC, and couldn't ask for a better guy. So that part turned out really well. And like I went in, like I told you, with a guarantee of aviation control. That didn't fit the Navy billet. So when I got out of boot camp, when we graduated, and they passed out the orders, I had orders to Commissary A school, which is a combination of you learn how to cook, you learn how to bake, you learn how to cut meat, you learn how to work in a grocery store. And
Now, were you just randomly put there, or did you test for that, or how did you
No.
get just?
I think it was strictly because, going in, they asked you what you had done, and I had worked at the port restaurant, and I think that was the
Gotcha.
thing that, and I can tell you that I was really upset about that. I think at the time I thought, well, shoot, I'd rather be a boatswain's mate, and boy, was I wrong. And going to Commissary A school was, I believe it was 12 weeks, and it was really a test, because you had a quiz every day and a test every Friday, and you had to pass.
Oh boy.
If you didn't pass, you were out, And anyway, and it was really, we had good instructors, and I was really impressed with the whole thing, And so from there, after I graduated A school, I got orders to Key West, Florida, and now that sounds really, really nice,
Yeah.
except I was 19 years old, and this is still in the Navy at that time. You had to wear your dress whites off for liberty, and if you wanted to change into civvies or civilian clothes, you had to have a locker downtown, And there really wasn't much to do in Key West as far as, you'd go to the beaches and go swimming and that type of thing, which was fun, but you couldn't go to the bars or anything like that because you were too young, And, but the duty there, I was on the USS Forester, DER 334, which was kind of a different little ship, in that it started out as a DE, Destroyer Escort, and then in like 1955 or something like that, it went into Long Beach, and it was refitted, what they call refitted, and made it a DER radar ship, a spy ship is what it really amounted to. And when I was on it, as near as I can recall, we had 13 officers and about 90 enlisted men.
No, so a fairly small ship.
Well, it was 300 feet long. It was billeted to have, I think, to haul 200 crew, but I can't imagine that. I mean, the facilities on that ship were crude at the best. I mean, you had racks with open fans. There was, where you slept in the berthing spaces, there were no toilets and showers. You had to go to separate ones, and it was a challenge. Okay.
And how was it here's this boy that primarily grew up in landlocked Colorado and the Midwest? How was it for you going to sea? Did you get your sea legs, or?
Well, that's a good question. I was very fortunate, because I'll tell you, that was a rough riding ship, because the waves would break under it, and you just constantly slap like that, And so I never ever got seasick, you learn to lock your legs, you know, and deal with it. But a lot of guys, you know, that's not the case. And but the good part of that ship was on that ship we had a chief commissary-man, a first class, a second class, then me, who I was an E3, but I was a designated striker, meaning I was going to be a cook. And then we had an E3 that was striking for that job. He not necessarily was going to get it, but he was trying to get it. And what was interesting was the E6 and E5 were supposed to be galley captains. And the only time they ever really worked were when we were at sea. When we were in port, for the most part, I ran my own watch and did everything from, you know, of course you had mess cooks, but it taught me to order the food, think ahead, plan ahead, all that kind of stuff, because I wasn't getting, and that was good, because I really learned how to do it, and made E4 on that ship. But the mission of the ship itself was, we would go down to Cuba, off the coast of Cuba, and of course, I don't know how many radar and sonar men we had on that ship, but we had a bunch. And we would spy on the Russians down there because they were building a submarine base.
Yeah.
And what would happen is we would be out in international waters and off the coast there, and the Cubans would send out their gunboats and try to surround you to get you to go into their water, you know, so they can board you or play that game. We'd go down there for 2 weeks at a time, and then our sister ship would relieve us. But I was probably more scared there than I was in the minefield that we'll talk about later.
Really? Huh.
Oh, that was dangerous. It was pretty dangerous down there. Stuff you don't hear about.
Yeah,
Talking
sure.
about,
Yeah.
And but anyway, what happened there was the Forester we gave it to South Vietnamese, and so I had the pleasure of taking it through the Panama Canal, which was
Talk about that.
when we owned it, and it was really neat. I mean, we went through there, and every ship, you know, you got priority, a military ship at the time, and so we're going through the canal, through the locks, up and down. All the other countries are dipping their flags to us, you know, saluting us. And it was really cool. I didn't have duty that day, so I got you're going right through the jungle, and it was really, really an experience, and I'll never forget that. And then from there, we went to Acapulco, which was kind of cool, and then to San Diego, and stayed there for a couple of days, and on to Hawaii, and then on to Guam, and that's where the South Vietnamese took over. It was decommissioned, and the South Vietnamese took over the ship, and it was kind of interesting in the history of that thing. In 1975, when Saigon fell, the Forester was in the shipyard there, and so it fell in the hands of North Vietnamese, and they took it and gave it a certain name, and it stayed active in their Navy to 1997. It was used as a training vessel of some kind. So that's kind of the history of the first ship. So
How long did it take you to get from the West Coast to Guam back then?
Well, it was slow.
Yeah.
I think, I'm trying to think. That was probably a 3-week thing. You know, we stopped in Hawaii for a couple of days, but I think if you looked at the Forester, they said it could do 21 knots, which is, it couldn't do 21 knots when I was on it to save its life. Probably 12 knots, I think, was steaming, you know, so that would be 14 miles an hour.
Oh, geez. Wow.
Okay. take a long time.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And anyway, so the Forester was good in the sense that it was like being in a tent or an apartment or something where you didn't have much, And then from there, I wanted to go anywhere on the West Coast, and anyway, ended up going back to San Diego.
Flying back or ticket?
No, I flew back.
Okay.
Yeah, I flew back, and so I picked up the USS Ogden LPD-5. Now I went from what they call the tin can Navy to the amphibious Navy, and I loved that.
Oh, yeah?
The Ogden was, it was 500 and some feet long, 108 feet wide, had a heliport, a helicopter on top, and on the bottom of the ship they could flood it. The Marines could take their amphibious gear, and the galley in that thing. Oh my gosh! I mean, we had a bake shop, we had a vegetable shop, we had a nice modern kitchen, because that thing was commissioned in 1965, and I went aboard in, I think it was probably August of '71 that I was aboard, and I mean, it was a new ship, and it was nice, and the berthing spaces, oh my word, you had nice bunks or racks, as they call them, with a separate shower for supply, and the reason that being a commissary-man or a cook is such a good job in the Navy is because when you're at sea, okay, you work you have a starboard watch and a port watch, okay, and so what happens is every day at 1300 or 1 o'clock, you relieve the watch. So that means that if you come on at 1300, you're going to do the dinner or supper meal, okay? And then you're off until the next morning at 4 o'clock or whenever you have to get up. Then you're going to do breakfast and lunch, okay? And then you're off the rest of the day. So you always have time off to do things, to wash your clothes, make sure everything's in order, that kind of thing. And you don't have to get up in the middle of the night and stand watch at 2 o'clock in the morning or anything like that. So that part is good. And one of the things that I've always said and I'll maintain is there's no more important job than that, especially back then, because the only thing that E6 and below had was to go up on that mess deck 3 times a day, get away from the non-commissioned officers, the chiefs and above, and have time to spend talking to their buddies and socialize, and it was really an important time. And the cook is the only person on the ship that is judged by everybody 3 times a day. Nobody else is,
Yeah.
And sometimes we were asked to take pig's ear and make silk out of it, But the thing that and when I went aboard the Ogden, I was an E4, and the billet, the job required E6 to do the job as a watch captain, because we fed 400 crew, okay, and then if we had Marines, if we took a full complement of Marines, here's the other thing, we would go from 400 men crew to an additional 900.
Oh, jeez.
And we had the same amount of cooks. Now the Marines sometimes would give us people, but they weren't cooks, for the most part. And so, and we had an extra 15 minutes to feed them, and our job was to make it as pleasant experience as we could. And just to give you an idea of when you're doing something like that, you have stacks, say it's breakfast, stacks and stacks and stacks of eggs. And I had 6 to 8 people just breaking eggs. That's it. And the cook's cooking in water, and you're sitting there calling out, easy over, easy, scramble, you know, and running those guys through the line. And you may have pancakes on top of that, or French toast, or whatever, potatoes, of course. And anyway, we took, and it really taught me how to organize more than anything, you know, and to that's probably to think ahead, not only 2 hours ahead, but 2 days ahead. Do I have to have this meat out? Do I have to have a thawed? Do I got reefer space? You know, all these kind of things. And anyway, so that part was really, really good, and it served me well.
Now, you had mentioned earlier on the Forester that you did a variety of things. Did those, being able to do that, help you with on the Ogden?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the experience transferred from the Forester to the Ogden, and you know, even though it was a lot more responsibility probably on the Ogden, a lot more men to feed, it was a lot better facility. I mean, you know, it went from like having an outhouse to having a penthouse, so to speak, you know, and we had our own bakery on there. The baker worked for me, I mean, but it was totally a separate facility. I didn't have to bake bread, I didn't have to bake desserts, cherry pies, or any of those type of things, cookies, cakes. That was all gone, you know. And the same with the vegetables. I mean, we had a separate vegetable compartment where all the vegetables were prepped and brought over, you know, and so I mean, it was just totally different. And the ship rode so much better, you know. I mean, you kind of rocked on the Ogden, where the Forester was boom, 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 you know. And I didn't tell you, on the Forester one day, we hit a storm and we took a 45-degree roll. This is I was on duty, and we're over like that, and everything was tied down: the coffee machines, the juice machines, the milk machines. We lost the juice machines and knocked a couple guys out up in the radar shack, and well, I thought we were going over, but she come back. When she came back up too, and we were in the kitchen and or the galley as they call it, and we were just lucky we were serving rather than cooking, and you know, because of the flat grill and stuff, and somebody could have got really hurt or running the grinders or something like that, you know. But anyway, but you know, the Ogden. We did a Westpac, which turned into, what happened was, it was Easter of '72, and pretty much the United States had pretty much pulled back from Vietnam by that time. But anyway, the North Vietnamese kind of really made a big push south. So obviously it upset President Nixon. So what happened was, it was called Operation Linebacker, and the Navy and the Air Force just really got after North Vietnam and just bombed them intensely. And at the same time, there was called Operation Pocket Money. They decided meaning President Nixon and the admirals decided to cut off the supplies in North Vietnam by mining Haiphong Harbor and some of the coastal inlets. And what happened was they did it by air, and that was the first time it was ever done by air. Well, the advantage was they could drop a lot of mines in a hurry. The disadvantage was they didn't know exactly where they were at, you know, and I mean, they had a good idea, and the mines that they dropped were magnetic, and and they were self-activating and self-destructing for the most part. And so what happened is when they cut off the supplies, I think in November, that's 72, the Paris peace talks started. And they started and then they stopped, and then I think January 27th of 73 was kind of finalized. And a part of that was one of the things that was the Navy had to take the mines out of Haiphong Harbor and the coastal waters. And the Navy, to their credit, had planned ahead and figured that might be something they would have to do. And so the way they did it is they had 10 ocean-going minesweepers, and they had, I think, 4 or 5 LPDs like us, and some LHs, and it was called Operation N-Sweep Task Force 78. And we were, in the way, they had helicopters and they had what they called a mop, which was metallic orange tubes. And so these helicopters would pull these long tubes full of styrofoam and metal or charge at what they thought was a field. And now, I remember vividly being told that we're going to do this, and one of my favorite things to do on the ship was to walk to the bow, and especially early in the morning, get that fine ocean spray, and the smell out there was just something else. It was just, you can't hardly describe it if you've never done it. But anyway, and I thought, well, okay, if this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do. And we were so busy that down in Key West or down in Cuba, I was a lot more afraid than I ever was in the minefields. And now, come to find out, depending on who you talk to, only some people say one mine was blown up, some people say 3 because they shut off by themselves. But we didn't know that. Nobody told us that, and they didn't know that, All we knew all they told us was there were literally thousands of them out there, And so we were out there. Well, we went out in February, and I think February 6th of 73. And North Vietnam didn't let the prisoners go as scheduled, so Nixon pulled back so we went back to the Philippines and practiced some more. Then we went out March 6th, I think, a month later. And anyway, the longest we were out there at one stretch was 63 days. And it was really, really tough duty, especially for the airmen, because the helicopters and we didn't have, I think they were short some people, okay, to be fair, in the air department. And one morning, they didn't report for duty. And there's 23 of them in the air department, and they requested to see the captain. And so what ended up was 10 of them, they met with the captain, 10 of them went back to work, 13 of them didn't. And they were eventually court-martialed in the Philippines and sentenced to, I think, 75 days of hard labor and demoted in rank.
Wow.
And it was kind of a mini, I wouldn't call it a mutiny, but kind of in a way. And so anyway, and that ended. We were out there off and on, well, more on than off, but every once in a while we'd go to the Philippines, or we'd go to Hong Kong once for R&R for a few days, then back out. And then we were finished with that in July July, and I think we came home in August, and of course we crossed the equator. And
Oh, you got to tell that story.
well, that's a King Neptune and that
Yeah.
whole thing across the equator to be a shellback, and it doesn't matter if you're, how long you've been in the Navy. If you haven't crossed it, you got to go through the initiation, And of course, we had saved the garbage for months and months and months, and as a cook, I was one of the first ones to go through, because we started in the morning, and I told you we had watch at 1 o'clock. We want to change. Well, I had duty that day at 1 o'clock, so I had to get through, and oh my word, it is just awful. It's just awful.
And what, you basically had a tunnel of trash, right?
Yeah, I got a picture.
Yeah, oh good. Well, yeah, we'll get
Okay.
that. Yeah.
And it's just like that. You got these big bags full of garbage, and you crawl through it, and you got guys beating you with rubber hose. It's not hard, but
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
And then at the end, we had boatswain mate first class White. He had a stomach on him back then, like, well, you couldn't even be in the Navy now, And I don't know what they had on it, but they take and rub your face in it, and oh my God.
And it's all greased up or something,
Oh
isn't it?
yeah, it's got like lard and sardines. I don't know. It's just, I'm telling you, it'd make I don't know, it'd make anybody just want to go to the side of the ship, and But once you get through it, boy, you go down, take a shower, and go back up, and you can be on the beaten end, and so it's kind of fun, and of course that goes in your permanent record. Not everybody. Matter of fact, we had an E8 chief. He was really cool, and he'd never gone through it. And
Really?
we had some officers that hadn't gone through it, and the other thing I didn't say about the Ogden was we took a lot of pride in making our crew try to feel good, and making the mess deck a good experience for them, And the thing that I did learn was, which really served me well later, was, oh my gosh, let's say barbecue, okay? Now imagine you got guys from all over the United States, all right? Barbecue. You got Texas barbecue, Memphis barbecue, Kansas City barbecue. You're not going to satisfy them all. You got maybe one meal you serve what we call New England corned beef. Well, the guys from New England liked it, but the guys from the South didn't. And so you really learn about different cultures and different way people eat and things like that. And then I was fortunate when we were in San Diego. They asked me to be. They sent me to what they called sanitation school, which is really interesting. You learn about all kinds of things, and botulism and all kinds of things. So I was the sanitation officer, as they called it on the ship. So that was another little responsibility, which, helped me down the road. And in the Navy, there's a thing called the NAY Awards. It's for Alfred P. Ney, and it's for the best. You compete against the fleet and different size ships, and we should have won first place, but we got second place, and I was really proud of that.
Oh, sure.
And later on, after the Navy, the company I worked for, we were highly involved in going to the NAY Awards, and because we sponsored it, and one of the sponsors, I should say. So that was a sense of pride for that. And anyway, and the other thing you have is you have what we call, and they don't call it that anymore. They call it your culinary specialist now. But you have guys when you come aboard and say you're new aboard a ship, usually you have to go what they call mess cooking, you know. Those would be the guys that make coffee in the morning, work for you, do the pots and pans, peel potatoes, all that kind of stuff, you know. And that's usually for 90 days. And, to take those guys and make them feel important and part of a team is a challenge, you know, and I think I learned to do that pretty good because it served me well down the road in another job. And so, anyway.
Well, to think to do that at that age too, to have that thought that I need to make these guys feel important, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, you know, and I would go back to say that probably at the Fort Restaurant when I made head cook, you know, that was back then, and this is 68, 69, head cook was like $4.25 an hour, pretty good, you know. But I learned also in a hurry that I didn't have the salad man and the backup cook doing their thing and the dishwasher, you know, it all backed up on you, so, make them feel important, you know, and part of the team, so, anyway, but yeah, you know, we're out there, we got hazardous duty pay, hazardous duty pay was $65 a month, tax-free, and combat pay was $65 a month, tax-free. So, but, you know, the downside was, you know, we were exposed to Agent Orange, you know, and a lot of the guys on the ship have had issues from, and of course the Ogden too had lead paint and asbestos, you know, so that didn't.
Well, now, was that blowing off from the coast or from the on the helicopters that were landing, or what was the?
Well, part of it was that, part of it was equipment from the Marines, and the other. But I think really the biggest part was, blowing off from the coast out into the waters, and of course you have evaporators that make salt water from into fresh water, and they didn't get it all. I mean, I had open heart surgery in 2018, and 100% disability because of that, you know. And the good news is I'm in, you know, good shape, and you know, some of the other guys on the ship, you know, have had a lot worse. So I count my blessings. So it could be a whole lot. And I'm blind in one eye, but I don't think that had a lot to do with it. I think it might have some. And hard hearing, of course, but I think everybody who served in the military is almost hard hearing, you know. I go to the VA and we all have, seems like hearing aids.
Yeah, right.
So, anyway, but.
What was life, what would you do, you said you had those two shifts, what would you do when you weren't on duty? You said clean your clothes and such, but what would you do to entertain yourself to pass the time?
Well, that's a good question because we didn't have cell phones, obviously.
Yeah, right,
we didn't have computers. You know, we didn't have any of those type of things, but what we did is I didn't do a lot of this, but playing cards was a big deal, you know, poker especially. We did have one ping pong table, but I'll tell you what, you had to be pretty good to get to play.
Right.
And then one of the things I did a lot of was exchange books with guys and read a lot, you know, and then you know, the other form, I wouldn't call it entertainment, but the guys who were staying and making a career out of it were maybe as challenging in that you know, you have to pass a test and you're competing. Let's say I was gonna go for E5 cook in the Navy, okay? And the test is twice a year, and there may be, I don't know, let's say 200 openings, you know, and 1,200 guys taking the test, you know. Well, you have to finish high on the test. Your quarterly marks, your grades on how you do your job have to be high, you know, and so a lot of guys, and if you're taking the E5 test, they can ask you anything from E5 on down, you know, and the book probably for E5 is that thick. I mean, and each one of them, I worked for a Master Chief, at last I worked for a Master Chief E9. He had taken the E9 test, I think he told me 5 or 6 times. He scored 100 on the test every time.
Huh.
But he didn't have enough ribbons, and he didn't have enough sea time. You know, it took him forever to make it because of those things. And anyway, and today it's even more competitive, and most of those guys, they want a college education, you know, and most of them a lot of it is not only the test and your duty, but community service. What have you done for the community, you know, when you're in board? And all those things factor in, you know, and so it's a great career, but it's competitive.
Yeah.
Once you get to once you get to E7, it's very competitive.
Did you have any inkling of maybe making it a career, or you just wanted to do your enlistment and get out?
You know, no, I never thought of making it a career, simply because I think that, especially with the Navy, in my opinion, 4 years in the Navy and what I did in the Navy and where I got to go and all that, and the people I met were great, okay? But, you know, if you're married, it's a tough deal in the Navy, because you never know when you're going to deploy and how long you're going to deploy, and, you know, you're at the best, if you're going to make rank, you need to be out to sea, you know, and it's just not, you know, something I wanted to do.
Fair enough.
As a matter of fact, I think if I were going to stay in, I'd have probably got out and went in the Air Force, you know, if I were going to go that route. But, you know, once I got out and went to college, you know, the one thing that I wanted to do that the Navy did for me was I had a love of the food business, you know, and now I didn't want to be a chef, because they don't make any money and they work a lot, especially, you know, weekends and holidays and stuff like that. And I want to be in food manufacturing, and of course, in the Navy, I had a chance to, I got really, I don't even know why. Well, I guess I do know why. I had a bunch of friends in the Navy that were from Texas. And so I got all caught up in like breaded chicken fried steaks and stuff like that. And all the different breadings you could put on them. And you couldn't do that in the Navy. I mean, you had to follow the system. But it was always intriguing to me, you know. And so when I got out of college, I went to work for Armour and Company, which had nothing to do with breading, but I worked for them for 3-4 years, and you know, I ran a ham boning line, and again, that was quite an experience, because I had I don't know, 10 men on the boning line, probably 15 women on the boning trimmers, 2 skinners, and then people out and running the tumblers and things like that. And you know, that's a challenge, in that those people are tough people, because it's cold conditions, and anyway, I had taken kind of interesting. I broke in on day shift, and then and actually I was still going to college. I was a boner for a while.
So backing up real quick, let's do the transition from the Navy into civilian life. After your after the
Navy
mission off of Vietnam, you guys came back to the States, and then how much longer were you?
We got back in August, and I got out November 19th
Okay.
of '73.
And then you were able to use the GI Bill to
Right.
finally go to
GI
college?
Bill, went to college,
Yeah.
and then went to work for Armor. And
Did you major in food services or
no,
no?
business.
Business? Okay.
Okay. And I would have probably liked to got a degree in food technology, but it didn't work out. The college didn't really have it, and I couldn't get the courses I needed.
Okay.
You know, now if later on, I probably could have gone back and did it, but
Yeah.
you know, I was pretty well established then. But anyway, I went to work for Armor and ended up foreman is a manager with Armor. They ended up being they put me on night shift after I graduated college, and to run that, because day shift had all the management people there, and night shift didn't. And day shift, they always did a lot more volume than night shift, and so when I went on night shift, I gathered all the people together, and I said, I just come off day shift, and here's what they say about you, and they say you're not nearly as good, they say you're not nearly as fast, you're not nearly as skilled, and I don't think that's true. If you believe it, they're probably right. But if you don't believe it, let's show them they're wrong.
Wow.
And anyway, so I'd say within 2 months we were doing substantially more than day shift.
Really?
Oh yeah, and we would do things like, if depending on the night, if we had time in the receiving, it's always easier on hands. There's a left hand and a right hand. The cheek of the dog. And it's easier for a right-handed person to do the right side than it is the left. You got to know how to do both. But if I really wanted to screw day shift up, we had enough time, and I knew we'd beat them. We'd take and put in one bat all left hand,
Oh, really? Okay.
That would be where they start out in the morning, and it's slow them way down, and of course people loved it, and I'd share results with them, and maybe stupid little things like at break pass out candy bars or something like that, and they really
Wow.
got into it, and I might have an employee of the week where they got to sit in the foreman shack and eat lunch with us, or just stuff like that motivated people a little bit, and so then what happened was, from Armor, one of the guys that I used to compete with worked for Hormel. He and another guy, they were in Oklahoma City, and they started the breaded division of Hormel, which was not a big deal at the time. And anyway, and Hormel was a funny company. Hormel was very, very suit and tie and very formal, kind of like Armor in a way, and their little division in Oklahoma City, Hormel had bought a company called Hereford Heaven, and Hereford Heaven was a little breaded meat company, and they had what you'd call country salesmen. These guys had routes, and in Oklahoma you do as Oklahomans do. They wore cowboy hats and cowboy boots, and I don't know if I should say this, but anyway, this the two owners of the company, or manage the company, they go to the national sales meeting, and for 2 years in a row, they won the best, had the biggest, largest sales increase. And it wasn't fitting with Hormel's corporate idea of salesman, you know. And so what happened is, a company in Enid, Oklahoma, which is 75 miles northwest of Oklahoma City, came for sale, and they went up, and fortunately they bought it. So the guy who was the general manager of the plant left and went up to Enid, and the sales manager, the guy I initially worked for, Dave McLaughlin, he stayed with Hormel for a little while, you know. And anyway, so they contacted me and wanted me to come to work for them. And so I said, okay. And they were a $3 million company. They were a little regional breaded meat company, okay? And so when I went to work for him, Paul said, you know, Tom, if we called it Main Street Plan, if we can get it to $7 million, this is exactly what I can remember like yesterday. He said, we'll be eating bananas and rolling in money, you know. And the plant was capable of doing $13 million in sales. That's what it was capable of doing. And I think in 10 months we had it at 13 million.
Really?
And yeah, and from there we went to, and I was sales manager, okay, and well, it was just me and Dave, so the owner, you know, and from there we started hiring people. But they had another plant over in, it's called Pine Street, that they did. It was kind of a chicken plant. They redid that and put I don't know, spent $5 or $6 million, and it was capable of doing $37 million in sales. And I think we had that sold out in a year. And then there was a Raleigh bicycle plant that was out east of town, and they bought that, and Raleigh hadn't done anything out there for years. They bought that for $400,000. The whole plant was 150,000 square feet, and with the promise that eventually they would employ, I can't remember, 500 people or something like that. But that took us to, they put in 3 additional lines, breaded lines, and we could do 150 million in sales. You know, that's what it was capable of. And in the meantime, Gene Lennox and myself, just to give you a little history, in chicken fried steaks, there's basically, you can do a hand cut, a steak, okay, and bread it, okay? You can do what we call a chopped and form. That would be a hamburger type thing, and bread it, okay? Then you can extend it and put soy in it, okay? And so from that hand-cut steak to that chopped and formed all meat, there's a gap, and it's sales-wise, dollar-wise, back in the day, it cost $26 for a hand-cut and $16 for a chopped and formed. So that's a $10 spread, you know. And people would say, God, you know, I can't quite afford that top of the line, but you'd like to use something better. And so we put our heads together, and probably after 2 or 3 years, we came up with a machine cut solid muscle chicken fried steak. Now, the advantage is this. If you have people on the line hand cutting, you might get 200, 300 pounds an hour, okay? Of course, that's why it's $26, you know. But if you can use a machine, you can get 2,000 pounds an hour, you know. Well, it's great to get 2,000 pounds an hour, but you got to be able to sell it too, you know. And so I knew that we would get a lot of pushback on selling it, because salesmen, oh, I don't know, and brokers the same way, and that's how, we had our own internal sales force, and we had a broker network, and I knew I was gonna have to really convince them to do it, and part of that was, I went out and sold a bunch of it, and then I convinced the company to let me start a training school, and I went and learned how to train people, and I went to Bob Pike's training schools and paid for it myself, and then I went to OU for 9 months, and that was supposed to be a training thing, and it was a joke actually, but anyway, the training school turned out to be a large success. And to give you some numbers now, my goal when I went there was to make it the largest breaded manufacturer, beef breaded manufacturer in the United States. So we went from 85 when I started to 2010 when we sold. We sold for $1 billion. We were the largest in the world, not the United States, in the world. We employed a couple thousand people, and eventually the group that bought us was a financial group, and eventually they sold to Tyson. And so anyway, that was very interesting, and so then
what do you attribute? I mean, that was some serious growth in short periods of time. What do you attribute that to? Even if you got to honk your own horn here.
Well, I think it was ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things if they play on the same team and pull from the same rope. Okay, and it's making people believe that they can do things that they ordinarily wouldn't do, and you do that by being yourself and setting very, very aggressive goals. You don't aim for the ceiling, you aim for the stars, okay? And you take little successes and you celebrate them, and you train and train and train and train people to, I didn't teach them, I used to have guys tell me, man, I'm working as hard as 10 men. And I say, that's not your job. Your job is to get 10 men to work hard for you, and the way we're going to do it. Okay, so we had our own salesmen, but you have brokers. Now you go to, you know what a food broker is? Food broker is like a real estate broker, bring buyer and seller together. You go to the broker and you say, well, how many lines do you have? They'll lie to you every time, They'll say, oh, we got, 10 or 15 when they got 25 or 30, And so the trick there is, how do you get them to sell your line, And you do that by, number one, train, okay? Most companies see training as an expense rather than as an asset. And if it's done right, it's an asset. So you go to the broker and you sit there and you go, you know what? In 2 hours I can have you an expert in this product, And so you walk them through it, This is a steak. This is a hamburger. This is a hamburger with soy in it. You show them, People are visual. People learn. I think Confucius said, things I hear I forget, things I see I understand, but things I see and do I completely understand, And so that's what we would do. We set up little training sessions like that, seminar, hands-on, and then we took it a step farther. Once we're into training, I said, I've got people here who can do my VP job. Let's start a military division. And so let me start that. And so we started a military division.
To sell to the military?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, I traveled all over the world, so I owned the military and had my own military brokers, and then when I retired, I had a little brokerage business. I kept that for I don't know, a year or so, and just dabbled in it, and then I finally fully retired. But you know, one of the things I did do was I did a lot of self-education. I'm really a believer in self-education, and one of the things I did do was I was always interested in this business, and that was the auction business. And the reason I was interested in it is because, you know, if you do an auction, it's somebody else's inventory, you know, it's somebody else's marketing money, and you collect the money and you disperse the money, you know. So I like all that, you know. And so I went to auction college and took a couple weeks off, went to auction college, met a lot of great people, learned a great deal about thinking on your feet and selling. And, you know, I can't say I ever did a lot of auctions, but it sure helped me in thinking on your feet, thinking quick, you know. And anyway, so after I got done with it, that was Advanced Food Company. One of our competitors wanted to hire me, and I initially said no, because they wanted me to be VP of sales. And I said, I don't want to do that, because you're responsible for a lot of people. And they said, well, how about the military? I'll do that for you, you know. And then they got bought out, and American Food Group bought them out. And it was kind of funny, because I was watching. It was kind of like American Food Group's own people. They're a commodity company, but they had a little division that was a food service company. And people at King's Command, they're all vying for that VP job, you know. And so it was fun to watch that. And one day I get a call from Jeff Jones, who's the executive vice president of American Food Group, and he said, why don't you come to Green Bay and talk to me? And I said, about what? He said, oh, it's just talk. I like to get to know people, you know. And so Donna says to me, well, why are you going to Green Bay? I said, I don't know. You know, I didn't. And so I went up and, you know, and he knew a lot about Advanced Food Company, and we talked, and you know, he was picking my brain about food service, and which was fine. And anyway, got back home, and of course the wife said, well, you know, what Jeff want? And I said, I don't know. I think he just wanted to pick my brain about food service, and I'm sure he's going to name a vice president pretty soon. And he called me back a couple of days later and said, I want you to be vice president of sales for me. I said, I don't want to. And he said, would this make you interested? And I said, yeah, that would. That number did. And so I did that for a couple of years, and I could tell that they had bought it to sell it, and they were going to sell it. And so I kind of said, well, this would be nice to just have my own little brokerage business, which I did. And anyway, transitioned out of that, and you know, so I had a great career, and you know, it was just like, so go back to the Navy, commissary, transition that experience into civilian life, you know. And then of course I have two great kids. I have a girl and a boy, you know, and Amy's got her LPC license, licensed professional counselor. Ryan is general manager for Worldwide Vintage Automobiles, you know, and I have 6 grandchildren, and the oldest grandchild is 22 and goes to CSU, and the youngest one is 3, so there's quite a spread in there. Yeah. And the oldest one, I think, is going to be a journalist of some kind, and then we have the next one is, she's 12. Her name's Callaway, and she's she's an actress, and she's done the Walton films, you know, and she played Elizabeth Walton. And,
Really?
Yeah. And she's done a lot of commercials. And the next little guy is Gunnison, and I think he's going to be like his uncle. His uncle played 10 years in the NFL, and he's quite a little football player. And so he's really pretty good. And the next one's Sullivan, and she is, I think she's going to make it. She wants to be a doctor, a baby doctor. So, and the next one is, her name is, she lives over here in Longmont, and she had a bad start in life. She was born at 24, 25 weeks. She weighed less than 2 pounds, and she had two or three brain bleeds, and then we didn't know it, but she was tongue-tied, and they finally figured that out, but you know, she has come a long, long way, and she's smart as a whip. So I just, the thing that she's been through is just remarkable. And then Ryan, that's my son, he's got 4 of these 6. They had another little girl, and she's 3. Man, oh my word. I don't know. She runs the show, and she is something else. And so I don't know what she's going to do, but God bless her.
Now, how did you talk about how you met and wooed Donna then?
Well, okay, yeah. When I told you I went to work for Armour and Company, she was up in, she lived in Iowa, and my parents bought a restaurant. My dad was from Grinnell, but they bought a restaurant in Garner, Iowa, and that's where she was from. And of course, Mason City and Garner are like 12 miles apart. And my younger brother Rick and Donna worked together, and the folks had a, this is after I was in the service,
Yeah.
The folks had a fish fry on Friday nights, and Rick and I would always, I was back there, would help them with the fish fry, because it was a big deal. And she came in there one Friday night with her hot pink pants on, and I said to Rick, I said, wow, who's that? And of course he knew her because he worked with her. And I don't know, I think we hooked up at the VFW, and from there it just, one thing led to another, and we got married, and the kids come along, and couldn't have married a better woman. We've been married, it'll be 50 years in January. So anyway, but yeah, and she put up with all the traveling, and you know, I'd be gone for a week or 2 at a time, sometimes 2 weeks if I was overseas, you know, and she took care of everything, you know, and anyway, so it all worked out great.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You know, and again, she's the one who wanted me to do this, or I probably wouldn't have done it, you know. But I just...
Well, tell me a little bit. I'm fascinated by your thought process and your philosophies on things. How did that develop over? How did you develop that?
Well, you know, my younger brother, he just, I think I have to say this, passed away here a year or so ago. And when we were in high school, now he's only 15 months younger than I am. Okay.
He was one of the twins?
Yeah, he's one of the twins. And so when I was a senior, he was a junior, and we took a class called plastics, and my thought from the little synopsis that they put out on it, it was a new class. I thought it was about learning the plastic industry. I thought we were going to take a Because my whole thing back then was even business accounting and stuff in high school. I thought we were going to take a deep dive into their plastics P&L, some company, and how they went to market and, their distribution, all that kind of thing. And it wasn't. It was making things out of plastic.
No.
Now, I told you my dad was very handy. My older brother is super handy. My younger brother was super, super handy,
And how about yourself? That is... Oh.
And I can do some things, but I'm not at their level by any stretch. And not only was he handy, he was a perfectionist too, on top of it, my younger brother. And so we ended up, unbeknownst to either one of us, in that class together. He had taken it too. And so our instructor, who didn't engage very much, gave us a project for the year. And anyway, Rick made this elaborate ship, and I made this little house. I called it a house. It was more like a birdhouse, And to be fair to me, for my God-given ability, I think it was equal to the Golden Gate Bridge, but nobody else felt the same way. But anyway, but Rick had this knack for going around and because there were juniors and seniors in there, and just helping people, and offering constructive criticism, advice, helping them, and again, I think it was part of the way we grew up and that we moved around,
Mm-hmm.
and Rick was very, very likable. And anyway, about 2 weeks to go and school's out, the instructor calls us in, and Omar Beatty was his name. And he said, sit down, boys. And so he said, I just want you to know you're the two best brothers I've ever had. And of course my chest comes out, and I said, well, how many brothers have you had? He said, well, I've been teaching for 30 years. And he said, well, first of all, he said, you're the two best brothers I've ever had in 30 years.
Huh.
And I said, well, how many brothers you had? And he said, well, I think you're the first. And I said, oh, set the bar pretty high, did we? And then he said I just went and sat in the corner. He said to Rick, he said, I'd like you to be my assistant next year if you want to be my assistant. He said, I've cleared it with the administration, and if you want to come in and be my assistant, I'd love to have you. He said, I love the way you work with people, how you handle people, and I want to take advantage of that. And of course, Rick accepted, And when I went in the Navy and was in the position of being a cook, of course, I told you earlier, you have to think ahead and all that type of thing, and you need help if you're going to be successful and put out good food and good meal to people. And so I said, to myself, I said, because it always haunted me. I said, what did Rick do? And I came back to, it was the golden rule. Do unto others you have them do unto you. But when I got in a position to teach, and I would say to myself, and I said, because relationship selling one-on-one, people buy from people, so you got to develop that relationship. And follow the golden rule. Well, I just didn't connect with some of them. And somewhere I heard, this, and I said, this is Rick over and over. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, And I said, that's it right there, And that is so true. And so I called that the Rick rule. And for example, let's say that you're a broker and I'm the manufacturer, and we're going to go out and make calls, and we're going to go sell chicken fried steaks, okay? And let's say that you do okay, but you're not quite where you need to be, all right? So this is how I'm going to handle it. I'll go back to the office and I'll say, oh my God, Brad just killed it. I mean, he killed it, If you want to know how to sell a solid muscle chicken fried steak, you need to go to Brad, because I'm not going to be here all the time. That man knows it. Now, I just handed it to you, and guess what you're going to do? You're going to step up, and other little things like, to get brokers to work for you. Yeah. Okay, well, I can't make that sales meeting. We're going to do it to distributor, even though maybe you could. You need to do it, and I can't wait till Monday to call Terry the buyer to see how you've done it. Oh, really? And just use that as a reward system, and you'd be funny how people step up to where you're putting them, and so I call it the praise, got to make you earn it, but if people love, here's another thing, people love to be an expert, but you take a buyer, they don't like to buy from an expert, If you were say you were in Texas, okay? Everybody in Texas serves a chicken fried steak. And I walk in there and let's say the hardest person to change in the world is the person who's making their own, okay? Why? Well, this has been a family recipe for 35 years and Grandma made it. We can't change it now. We have customers coming from Brazil to eat it. You get all this stuff, and so, you could approach it like, well, it's not very good, but we could make it better, You ain't going to get the business if you said that. But if I said something like, wow, okay. Well, do you ever, Brad, do you ever have a party? Yeah. Do you ever serve chicken fried steaks? Yeah. You ever have people who say they're going to have 30 people and they show up with 40 and you don't have enough? Yeah. Why don't I give you a case of mine? And when that happens, just try it, And pretty soon it's pretty easy to use that, it takes 3 minutes and a deep pepper. Just little things like that that you teach people, and how to control a cutting with a distributor and how to compliment distributors. And, the one thing that people love is to talk about their business, And the one gift that I had, if I ever had a gift, was, you could tell me if you were a buyer that you had a yellow lab named Duke, I could remember that without trying, It just, how's old Duke doing? Oh, Duke's doing, that type of thing. And that was my philosophy, and it was more than that. The company, the owners of the company, what they created was number one, they were both huggers, so they hugged everybody, and number two, they really created a family company. They really cared about the guy who ran the manufacturing part of the company. He could tell you every employee on the line, how many kids they had, where they went to school. I mean, he just cared, and it showed. And anyway, so.
Fascinating.
Yeah. But I would say this to my
Yes, please.
I had a coach in high school, my wrestling coach, and he used to say, a person who commits to excellence and uses that through self-control and determination is undefeatable. And I always, that always has stuck with me,
And you found it to be true.
Yeah. And I would say this to my grandkids, you can do anything you want to do if you're willing to work hard enough. Education isn't enough. You have to have common sense, and you have to be willing to work hard and smart. And if you do those things, you're going to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. So, anyway.
Well, that might be a good quote to end the interview on. Unless I always like to ask at the end if there was anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about, any other stories that have floated to the top that you wanted to mention, or do you think by and large we rounded out your story pretty good?
I think we rounded it out pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I really do.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for sitting down to tell a great story, but as well, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you for your support. So,
Okay.
it's a pleasure doing it. Well, this is me just got out of boot camp. This is probably January of 1970. You can see I'm an E2, got my good conduct medal, and home on leave, getting ready to probably go back to A school. So. That's practicing off the coast of San Diego. We're just practicing helo landings, and I think we have some amphibious craft aboard. Going to pick those guys up. Those are Marines, so that's just a practice. It's probably 1972, I guess. That's coming back from Vietnam in 1973. That's probably August, going under the Coronado Bridge. You can see we're standing at the rail in our dress whites, getting ready to be received by our girlfriends and families, which I didn't have a girlfriend, but anyway. That's the actual mess deck of the USS Ogen LPD-5. That's where our guys actually ate, and I don't know which meal it is. I would guess that's probably lunch. That's usually the biggest, but we would take these tables down at night, and we would have movies there every night if we were at sea, and so that's what it actually looked like. Well, that is going through the shellback initiation, crawling. That's not me, but that's crawling through the garbage, and oh my gosh, it looks awful, and believe me, it is awful. But it's nice to be a shellback too. That's just a shellback initiation, the badge that everybody who's a shellback proudly wears and on their hats and stuff. So anyway, golden shellback. This is my band of brothers. In the Navy, you get close to certain people because you're on ship, and actually this was taken 2 years ago in 2023 in Fredericksburg, Texas. It was a USS Ogden reunion. The gentleman over here, Rusty McClellan, he was a radioman, but the way I got to know him was he mess cooked for me when he came aboard the ship. He worked for me for 3 months. This is James Norton. He's from Lubbock, Texas. He was a boatswain's mate. We became friends through Rusty. This is Billy Richards. He's from Corsicana, Texas, and he was a signalman. And again, I got to know those guys through Rusty, and we became friends. We've, I think, in about 1990 or 95 maybe, Rusty called me one night, and one of the guys that was a radioman got out and was a federal marshal, and he tracked us all down.
I'll be darned.
Anyway, we've kept in touch, and matter of fact, we were going to go to Colorado Springs this year and meet up. But Rusty's wife is needing an operation, so we'll put it off a year. But we're very close to this day.
So do you guys just have a reunion, or is it ship reunions?
It's a ship reunion.
Okay.
Yeah, but we kind of huddle up to, to our wives are very close, and they're good friends, so it all worked out great.
Oh, wonderful.